Give the call to the member for McKellar.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very glad to speak in favour of this bill, not because I have some sort of ideological propensity for lower taxes or companies getting more money or indeed giving up a never-ending stream of good news stories to key constituencies. I stand here to support this piece of legislation because history has shown us over and over again that lower taxes with less government leads to a better society because it is a freer society, a more equal society and a happier one. Western democratic societies have never had to set up their own institutes to measure global happiness in order to declare themselves the happiest people on the planet. It really is, Madam Deputy Speaker, Disneyland politics. If we are to bring the best of ourselves to this place, then surely we must learn from history. Surely we must enact legislation that we know will help our community be happier, give people more opportunity and therefore more choices. Underlying this bill is the lesson that we have all learnt over many years, that when the state taxes its people and companies less, people are better off. The reason for this is pretty obvious. Individuals are better at spending their own money than the government. It is what PJ O'Rourke calls other people syndrome. You know, we are better at spending other people's money than we are at spending our own. If, let's say, I'm buying myself a car with my own money, you can bet I'm going to get a pretty good car at a pretty good price. But when I'm buying a car for someone else, with someone else's money, well, let's just put it this way, different criteria apply. And that person gets a very different car to the one which I would have bought myself. Wherever possible, we should leave money in the hands of other people who earned it, because they are going to use it more sensibly and more effectively than the state. And so it is with company tax. You see, companies do not really pay tax, they collect them, but they don't pay them. Any tax you charge a company gets passed on in lower growth, lower investment, higher prices, lower returns and lower wages. And when you vote against this bill, what you are voting for, and let's be very clear, are fewer jobs and for those out of work and lower wages for those in work. That's what the Labor Party stands for when it opposes this bill. Many Australian companies have to compete against foreign companies that emanate from jurisdictions with much lower rates of tax and much friendlier tax environments. How are they meant to compete in the market when that is the situation? Why do some people in this place want Australian-owned companies to do worse than foreign-owned ones? What this parliament needs to appreciate is that you can't move land, you're limited to how many people you can move, and it is always the most skilled that do, but there are few limits on how much capital you can move around the world. So in an environment where most investors are happy with returns that are less than 10%, what do you think the attitude of international investors are when they are faced with more viable businesses in Australia that have to pay 30% tax versus one in Singapore at 15% or in Ireland at just 10%? So if you are a small business or a startup or just trying to grow your business, forget about getting competitive and reasonable financing from overseas. You see, the Labor Party and the Greens want to make sure that you only get a loan from the banks, that you have to put your house on the line and anything else you might have. If you lower tax rates, you increase the supply of risk capital in our economy. Now, of course, if you are the Greens or Labor, you don't want to see the banks having to compete for business. Oh no, none of that for their mates in the banking sector. You see, under Labor and the Greens, the only people entitled to preferential treatment are the unions. And if you are an Australian entrepreneur trying to build a business that employs people, that provides jobs and creates competition so consumers can get a better deal, well, don't expect to get any favours under Labor or the Greens, because under those opposite, they believe they are better at spending other people's money. So let us just review what this bill does. Further to the Treasury Laws Amendment Act in 2017, the bill amends the Income Tax Rates Act 1986 to progressively extend the lower 27.5% corporate tax rate to all corporate tax entities by 2023 financial year, and further reduce the corporate tax rate in stages so that by the 2026 financial year, the corporate tax rate for all entities will be 25%. At the moment, the company tax rate has only been reduced to 27.5%, and this reduction only applies to businesses with aggregated turnover of less than $10 million from 2016 and then to businesses with aggregated turnover of less than $25 million in 2017. Reduction of the corporate tax rate then applies to businesses with an aggregated turnover of less than $50 million from 2018 income year onwards. This bill contains residual components that did not pass in May 2017. These include provisions to incorporate tax reduction progressively within a specific timeframe. This bill allows the tax reduction to apply gradually to higher turnover thresholds until cut off to businesses earning less than $1 billion by 2023. The threshold changes are $100 million in the income year 2019, $250 million in the income year 2020, $500 million in the income year 2021 and $1 billion in the income year 2022. Aggregated turnover threshold is then removed in 2023. Uniform company tax rate of 27% would then apply to all businesses in 2024 income year, which would then be lowered to 26% a year later, and finally remain at 25% from 2026 income year onwards. These changes would further encourage growth and innovation, promote investment that would then grow the economy, making Australia more competitive with other countries. The benefits are broader than tax cuts. Increasing the aggregated turnover threshold will increase access to small business entity concessions, such as the $20,000 write-off for depreciating assets, immediate deductions for certain expenditures, and simplified depreciation rules. Economy-wide modelling by Treasury and KPMG suggests changes will have net benefit on GDP, GNI, employment and investment. So companies in my electorate, like Pharmacare, that provide supplements to help people live healthier lives, can invest in bringing more products to market, products that can help people avoid common health issues, products that can help people live healthier lives. And while they are doing that, they are growing their business here in Australia, employing more Australians. Or what about Dematic, a company that designs, engineers and builds the logistical systems for warehouses that increasingly drive our economy? Dematic, like so many other businesses, has multiple choices as to where they invest their money. They can either ramp up their businesses on the northern beaches of Sydney, building up their high-end design and engineering units, or rather do that in one of the other 5 nations they operate in. And you cannot tell anyone here, except for those members who keep unicorns as pets, that the level of tax they are paying in one country over another does not play a role in their decision-making process as to where they invest their money. Or look at Link Health, founded by John Bacon and his wife Lynn. Link Health is a truly innovative company. It has expanded around the world. It has saved many lives. And just as importantly, it has made the lives of so many others better. It supplied drugs to the Australian market when, to put it bluntly, none of the large multinational pharmaceutical companies would. According to Labor and the Greens, this truly remarkable Australian company should be put at a disadvantage compared to the very companies that could not and would not help Australians. And while there are plenty of other businesses in my community that would also benefit from a fairer, better and more efficient tax system, let me focus on 2 more only. Kobe Simmet from Best Practice Certification. Kobe and his team are doing the back-end work that helps digitise and grow companies. A company that helps others get on with doing business and providing a better place for all Australians. And finally, Andrew and Pip Goldsmith from the Boathouse, who took a punt, no pun intended, ploughed money into a rundown wharf that no one else would touch. It is now virtually impossible to get into as people from right across Sydney come to have breakfast and coffee over the water at Pittwater. With lower taxes, this Parliament will be encouraging more Australians to have a go and invest in buildings that have not been used for years and create spaces that people want to be in, or in their case, on. And there are many others, like Incat Cruther, that is tendering to have their own designed ships built by the US Navy, and H.I. Fraser, who does engineering works for things like dams. So there you have it, Madam Deputy Speaker. Companies that make people healthier, supply warehouses, build ships and dams and invest in public buildings. All of them employ Australians, all of them export overseas, all of them make our nation stronger and more content. And Labor and the Greens want to hurt them all.
Thank you, Member for